Welcome to the DX Today podcast, your daily deep dive into the AI ecosystem. I'm Chris, and joining me as always is Laura.
Thanks, Chris. It is great to be here because today we get to talk about a story that genuinely rewires how I think about cybersecurity in the age of frontier AI models.
So set it up for us, because when people hear AI and security in the same sentence, they usually brace themselves for yet another scary headline about hackers. What makes this one different?
This one flips the script entirely. We are talking about Anthropic's Project Glasswing, an effort to use a very powerful model to defend the world's most critical software before attackers can ever weaponize that same capability.
Okay, so this is defense rather than offense, which is refreshing. But walk me through what Glasswing actually is, because I think the structure of this program matters as much as the technology behind it.
Glasswing is a collaborative initiative that launched this past spring. And the core idea is to give trusted partners early access to find and fix vulnerabilities in software that billions of people quietly depend on every single day.
And when you say trusted partners, who are we actually talking about here? Because that list determines whether this is a small experiment or something with real systemic reach across the internet.
We are talking about roughly 50 initial partners, names like Cloudflare, Microsoft, Google, Cisco, and major banks. And it has since expanded to about 150 organizations across more than 15 countries.
That is a serious roster. Now, the engine behind all of this is a model I had not heard much about until recently, this thing called Claude Mythos Preview. What exactly is that model?
Mythos Preview is an unreleased, general-purpose frontier model. And what makes it remarkable is that it can apparently surpass all but the most skilled human experts at the task of finding and exploiting software flaws.
Hold on, that phrase exploiting software flaws is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, and it should make everyone a little nervous. Doesn't that mean the same model could be used offensively by a bad actor?
That is exactly the tension at the heart of this whole project, and it is why Anthropic has deliberately chosen not to release Mythos-class models to the general public until they have far stronger safeguards in place.
So the bet is essentially, let us put this in the hands of defenders first. Build the muscle on the good side before the offensive version of this capability inevitably leaks out into the wider world.
Precisely, and the numbers from just the first month are honestly staggering, because those partners collectively found more than 10,000 high or critical severity vulnerabilities in the most systemically important software on the planet.
10,000 critical vulnerabilities in 1 month is a number that is hard to even wrap your head around. Give me something concrete, because abstract counts like that can start to feel almost meaningless after a while.
Let me give you my favorite concrete example, which involves a cryptography library called WolfSL that runs quietly inside billions of devices. The kind of plumbing nobody thinks about until it suddenly fails on them.
And what did the model actually find buried inside that little piece of plumbing that apparently sits inside more devices than most of us could ever count in a single lifetime?
It constructed a working exploit that would let an attacker forge security certificates, meaning they could host a fake website for your bank or your email provider that would look completely legitimate to you.
That is genuinely chilling, because the entire trust model of the internet rests on those certificates being impossible to fake. So a flaw like that quietly undermines the little padlock icon we all blindly trust.
Exactly, and that one has already been patched and assigned an official identifier. But it perfectly illustrates the kind of deep, subtle flaw that human reviewers had simply been walking past for years without ever noticing.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I can already hear skeptics saying these AI tools just generate mountains of false alarms that waste everyone's time. How accurate are these findings, really?
That is a fair challenge, and the data actually answers it, because Cloudflare alone found 2,000 bugs. 400 of them high or critical, with a false positive rate their own team considers better than human testers.
Better than human testers is a remarkable claim, because the usual knock on these tools is that they drown engineers in noise. What about other partners? Did anyone else see results that dramatic?
Mozilla is the one that really got my attention because they found and fixed 271 vulnerabilities in a single version of Firefox, which was more than 10 times what they caught in the previous version.
10 times more in one release cycle is the kind of improvement that does not just help, it fundamentally changes the economics of how a security team plans and budgets its entire year of work.
And it is not just browsers, because there is a story about one partner bank where the model helped detect and prevent a fraudulent wire transfer worth $1.5 million before the money ever left the building.
Okay, so the model is clearly extraordinary at finding problems, maybe too good. And that brings me to what I suspect is the real twist in this story, because finding bugs is only half the battle, right?
You have landed exactly on the most important insight in the entire report, and it genuinely surprised me. Because the bottleneck in cybersecurity has now completely inverted from what it was just a couple of years ago.
Spell that out for me. Because for as long as I can remember, the whole problem was that we simply could not find vulnerabilities fast enough to keep ahead of the attackers chasing them.
Right, and that era is over, because the constraint is no longer finding the flaws, it is verifying them, responsibly disclosing them, and then actually designing and shipping patches that real users will install.
So the AI can generate a flood of valid vulnerabilities, but then this whole creaky human process of confirming and fixing each one becomes the dam that everything else backs up behind. That is a wild reversal.
It is, and the human cost is very real, because on average, a single high or critical bug takes around 2 weeks to patch, and some open source maintainers have literally asked Anthropic to please slow down their disclosures.
That detail floors me. An AI safety project being asked to ease off because the volunteers who maintain the world's critical software are completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of real problems being surfaced.
It really captures the moment we are in, because in the open source scan alone, the model flagged over 23,000 issues, with several thousand of those estimated to be genuinely high or critical severity.
And these are not theoretical, because if I understood the triage numbers correctly, when independent firms actually checked a sample of these findings, the overwhelming majority of them turned out to be real, valid problems.
Correct. The post-triage true positive rate came in around 90%, which means we are on track to surface somewhere near 4,000 confirmed serious vulnerabilities in open source code alone, on top of everything the partners found.
So if I'm a regular person listening to this on my commute, what does this actually mean for me? Because so far it sounds like a fire hose of problems with no obvious relief in sight.
In the short term, it means you should genuinely update your software the moment those little prompts appear, because the gap between a flaw being known and a patch reaching your device is the dangerous window attackers love.
That is such an unglamorous takeaway. Just install your updates, and yet you are saying it is now more important than ever. Precisely because both sides of this race are about to get supercharged by AI.
Exactly, and the bigger picture is that the major vendors are already adapting, because Palo Alto Networks shipped about 5 times its usual number of patches, and Microsoft says its patch volume will keep trending larger.
So the entire patching machine across the industry is visibly straining to scale up to meet this new reality, which suggests the people running these programs genuinely understand that something fundamental has shifted underneath them.
They do, and Anthropic is also trying to democratize the defensive side, releasing a tool called Claude Security in beta that in just 3 weeks was used to patch more than 2,000 vulnerabilities for enterprise customers.
That is an important nuance, because there is a real risk that only a dozen giant companies get these superpowers while everybody else is left exposed. Spreading the defensive capability around feels essential to me.
It is essential, and that is the whole strategic logic. Because Anthropic openly expects that other labs will reach this same Mythos class capability within roughly 6 to 12 months, whether or not anyone is ready for it.
Before we get to what comes next, I want to understand the disclosure process itself. Because you mentioned this careful chain of verifying and reporting. Why can't they just publish everything they find immediately and let everyone patch?
Because publishing a live vulnerability before a fix exists basically hands attackers a free roadmap. So the industry follows a roughly 90-day coordinated disclosure window that gives maintainers time to build and ship a patch first, even as the fire hose of new findings keeps creaking that polite old convention.
And that timeline is the part that keeps me up at night. Because once a comparably powerful model exists somewhere without these careful guardrails, the offensive version of this exact capability becomes cheap and widely available.
That is the race we are now in. And the optimistic framing is that if defenders get a real head start, we could end up in a world where software is hardened far better than it is today.
I want to sit with that optimistic version for a moment, because it is genuinely possible that we look back on this period as the painful but necessary transition to an internet that is fundamentally more secure.
I share that hope, but I think the honest framing is that we are in a messy interim phase where vulnerabilities are being discovered very quickly and patched far too slowly, and that gap is where the real risk lives.
So the work ahead is less about building smarter bug-finding models, which clearly already exist, and much more about scaling up the deeply human work of verifying, coordinating, and deploying fixes at internet scale.
That is the heart of it, and it is why groups like the UK's AI Security Institute matter. Because their independent testing confirmed that this model could solve complex, multi-step cyber attack simulations from beginning to end.
Independent verification from a government safety body is exactly the kind of check we should want, because we should never just take a company's word for it when the stakes are this high for everyone online.
Agreed, and that combination of capability plus outside scrutiny is what gives me cautious optimism. Because the technology is real, the risks are being named honestly, and the defensive side genuinely seems to have a meaningful head start.
If there is one thread to pull out of all of this, for me it is that the future of security will be decided not by who can find the most bugs, but by who can fix them fastest.
Beautifully put, and I would add that this is a rare story where the AI safety conversation is concrete and measurable rather than abstract, which is exactly why I think it deserves everyone's full attention right now.
I could not agree more. And I suspect this is a theme we will be returning to many times as those other Mythos class models arrive. And the whole industry scrambles to fix faster than anyone can break.
I am already looking forward to that follow-up conversation because this is going to keep evolving quickly. And the choices made over the next year will shape the security of basically everything we touch online.
That's all for today's episode of the DX Today podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.